Holy shit. Critics of Megalopolis are lame. It is a great film. I'm buzzing after mainlining this work of pure art and celebration of human potential straight into my veins. It's as though the creative impulses of Leo Carax and George Lucas were stirred together after tripping on LSD and devouring a goodly portion of the Western canon. It is a glorious celebration of America, genius, and humanity's potential to rise above the dirt and become gods. We have a fantastic mesh of literary illusions, philosophical ideas, and saccharine sweet love for all that man has achieved and could become in the future. No, the acting isn't realistic. Yes, the dialogue can be ponderous. No, the world you find yourself in isn't normal. The subtitle for this picture is A Fable. Come on, people, this isn't rocket science. Do you ask, why does the witch have a gingerbread house? Do you complain that Rapunzel doesn't have her hair ripped out of her scalp when it's used as a rope? Do you quibble over the hare losing a race to a tortoise? I would hope the answer is no. Yet these same people who can follow a children's story are bitching unendingly about a film which builds a world in just the same style. Most of the complaints about Megalopolis go out the window right away just by paying attention to those two words which were given to you at the very start of the fucking film. A fable. Now, and before I dive in, let's establish one thing. What is a bad movie? A bad movie has poor shot composition, lighting, and camera work. It has a derivative script with weak setups and payoffs and is devoid of creative spark. Does this describe Megalopolis? Absolutely not. The film is full of solid tracking shots and carefully constructed frames. It has produced dozens of indelible images which will stand the test of time, and only a few of them have thus far made their way onto Twitter. The triptychs alone are the best montages designed this century. There's a gorgeous chromatic light scheme involving blues, yellows, purples, and reds which imbue the film with an otherworldly quality that you just don't see in other pictures. And yet, for all the talk about the non-reality of this fable, there's also a deeply human heart at the center. How has no other reviewer talked about the brutal hatred Caesar's mother has for her brilliant son? How has no other reviewer talked about Caesar's declaration that the most important institution is marriage? How has no other reviewer talked about how becoming a grandfather radically changes a character's consciousness? You cannot in good faith call a well-crafted film with boundless creativity and a strong heart for all humanity bad unless you're ignorant or lying. So why then are people saying this? It's because it's unique, or because they ignored, again, the words "a fable" at the start of the bloody thing and were shocked by its style. There's genuine creativity on display as opposed to a series of derivations, and it's exhilarating to watch someone unpack their unconscious on the big screen with a huge budget. And talk about great timing. Just as America declines like Rome, we get this psychic call to action for the national egregor to choose a path towards greatness and a better tomorrow for our loved ones, or stagnation and death. Now I'm going to steal a synopsis I found online because it does a better job of summing up the film than I ever could. Genius artist Cesar Catalina seeks to leap the city of New Rome into a utopian, idealistic future, while his opposition, Mayor Franklin Cicero, remains committed to a regressive status quo, perpetuating greed, special interests, and partisan warfare. Torn between them is socialite Julia Cicero, the mayor's daughter, whose love for Caesar has divided her loyalties, forcing her to discover what she truly believes humanity deserves. Refusing to check out Megalopolis is a testimony to how lacking in curiosity you are. You're only hurting yourself with such foolishness. Now, I do have criticisms, and no, I don't think it's a masterpiece, but I do think it's great. We have a film which is an 8 out of 10 being treated like a 5, and it's completely false. So where on earth am I going to start for this review? That's a tough question because this film is a lot. Firstly, I'll say, how can people not appreciate the fractal nature of the story? The micro story concerning the family drama mirrors the macro story of New Rome's decay and rebirth. Julia begins as a vapid party girl, just as the people of New Rome are foolish, and through Caesar's boundless optimism and vision is transformed into a stronger, wiser, and more evolved human being. Megalopolis is a family drama played out over the reconstruction of the city of New Rome, and in turn is about the conflict between regressive and progressive mindsets in our world. Caesar cares deeply for humanity and is assaulted on all ends by his wealthy family who believe thoroughly in using power for their own personal ambitions rather than for the betterment of mankind. This is a picture where man's love for his wife and children inspires a consciousness shift for all that could produce a utopia. How can anyone not appreciate a story where men and women are needed to support one another instead of use each other to save humanity? Megalopolis is a film which speaks to man's inability to build everything in his lifetime, and so he must impart wisdom to the next generation so that they can carry the flame of our evolution further. If anyone calls the film superficial, then calmly explain to them what a fractal is and how every character represents institutions and mental models, and that should hopefully get them over that hurdle. Next, we have that Megalopolis is beautifully prophetic. In the chaos of Western civilization's upcoming collapse, we're going to see plenty of fascism as the answer types, and parasites looking to eat away at the corpse of once great nations for their own gain. But maybe, hopefully, in a defiant act of self-preservation or even a miracle from on high, a man like Caesar will arise to build a better world for all. Nietzsche once wrote that the Übermensch would be a Caesar with the soul of Christ, and our hero expresses this beautifully in Megalopolis. He is superior. He is superior to the rest of humanity as a genius billionaire who is even able to stop time at will. But he uses his superiority to bring heaven to earth for the lowly majority. It wouldn't surprise me if some of the criticisms towards Megalopolis were paid for, because such a man, such an image, lambasts our current day lords and ladies. Bankers, politicians, the press, and all fans of our vapid culture are the cancer devouring a once robust body. So the film excoriates debt, slavery, and all lower forms of living. In other words, it attacks the very people who created and sustain the decay America is experiencing right now. Moral degeneracy is also highlighted such that it depicts the wealthiest as engaged in incest. In contrast, our heroes all possess strong family values. That's another strike against it in many people's book, in my opinion, because most are too scared to suggest that there's a problem with a porn-addicted, sex-crazed populace. In that milieu, Caesar is a member of this upper class, much like Coppola, and sees the rapacious greed and pettiness for what it is, but he intends to use his position for the good of all. Again, hard to believe that didn't rub some people the wrong way. The film calls out our present-day elites, and yet also paints a beautiful picture of a future in which those with authority and privilege also carry an equal measure of responsibility. Another possible reason for the hate is that it's fundamentally a libertarian film. Caesar is a heroic individual who battles against a corpulent institution to push humanity forward into a brighter future. It is not the masses that will save humanity. It is not organizing a strong populace, but a small, elite group who are set apart for greatness. Anyone with tall poppy syndrome is bound to gasp and recoil in horror like a vampire before a crucifix at this depiction. Next we have the acting, which is not naturalistic at all. Remember, it's a fable. Aubrey Plaza is, in my opinion, the MVP because she has an incredible ability to make unusual characters feel so authentic. She plays Wow Platinum, a callous journalist and Caesar's mistress who claws her way up into a position of great power at the Crassus Bank. I loved her work and was delighted every time she came on screen. Adam Driver is as courageous as they come, with his willingness to embrace Coppola's weird vision and throw his body and his dignity in front of an oncoming train of mindless criticism with his portrayal of Caesar. He does not speak or act like anyone you could possibly imagine, Because he is not like anyone you could possibly imagine. He is superior. He is a god. Shia LaBeouf is great as a party boy psychopath. He probably had the easiest time on set because it really didn't seem like he was being stretched outside of his comfort zone. It's a little bit of shade, I admit, being thrown on the guy, but he does come across as a party boy psychopath. I'd read that Natalie Emmanuel had struggled to get a grip on her character Julia, but I couldn't disagree more as I loved the end product. She goes on the biggest arc in the film as she represents normies, and so we see her move from callow to conscientious, and she plays it all with grace and charm. Now, I do have criticisms. There is no denying that this film is far from perfect. Great, though. Just to reiterate, as far as I'm concerned, it is truly great. First and foremost is that the budget was stretched to breaking point. A lot of evocative images are phenomenal, but then when there aren't enough extras for crowd scenes, you're ripped out of the experience as you think, why is New York City, of all cities, so empty? A riot ends up looking like a small group of people having a fist fight instead of proper chaos. Secondly, the picture could have been a little longer to flesh out Cesar's biggest crises. His dead wife and 2 other trials, which I won't mention as that'd be a spoiler, are glossed over and really fail to change him as a man. He is an immovable object throughout the picture, and though he has scars on his soul, they never really change him. I would have personally been interested to see how this god could be impacted by the mortals around him. Just think of Jesus weeping at Mary and Martha's grief over the death of Lazarus. Sometimes it is human beings that can change the will of a god. Some of the dialogue is very on the nose as it explains concepts to the audience which can be understood from the images alone. It seemed at times that Coppola wanted us to get the picture instead of allowing it to wash over us without editorializing. Finally, and this is definitely the biggest criticism, its depiction of women is garbage. They are either love interests, sex maniacs, or jilted exes. While I don't believe it's done from a place of overt antagonism, it most assuredly came across as a man writing without any sense of what makes women unique besides their connection to great men. You'll notice this is one of my longer reviews because I really must say that Megalopolis is worth talking about at length. Anyone who has seen a lot of movies should find this full-throated creative phantasmagoria refreshing. Don't you want to see what the medium can become? Aren't you eager to be surprised for a change? Furthermore, a film by a man in his 80s, which is a celebration of youth, should be championed. How many boomers are so wrapped up in their own facile lives that they fail to care about any of the problems facing our world today? Here we have Coppola building a vision of love and hope for a world he won't live to see. It reminds me of this quote, "Blessed are old people who plant trees knowing that they shall never sit in the shade of their foliage." Coppola has done just this with the only tool he has, cinema. And personal art is great art, and there really is nothing more personal than Megalopolis. The picture provokes questions, ideas, and emotions rather than providing answers because it is ultimately us, the audience, who will be the ones that could potentially build a utopia if we are willing to evolve. And Coppola knows his time is running out. So he sows the seeds into our consciousness with just this very movie. Now, I can't wait to rewatch Megalopolis, and I thoroughly recommend you check it out. Very few, if any, filmmakers are like Francis Ford Coppola, and I'm so glad he has come into this world. Thanks for watching.
Imagine today's society as a branch of civilization about to reach a dead end. Is this way we're living the only one that's available to us?